Must be time to meet. The public session is about to open. Clerk, want to call the roll?
Mrs. Chilton?
Here.
Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill? Mr. Rue? Mr. Cope?
Here. Okay, we have a presentation to begin with
Yes.
about our art.
Yeah, commissioners, we have one work session item tonight, and that is we have Jessamy Jones, who is the director of the Springfield Museum of Art. And she is here to talk a little bit about the different programming that the Art Museum has, and also talk about their current capital campaign. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jessamy.
Great, thank you, Brian. So I'm so thrilled to be here. And it's really thrilling not just to be here with you all tonight, but also to be here in Springfield during such a time of forward momentum. And I'm really thrilled that the museum can be part of that. So I started back in January of 2020, about 7 weeks before COVID started. And so as you can imagine, I've learned a lot in the past nearly 2 years. And there are two things that I know now. One, I'm really proud of the work that my team is doing, that our board is doing. And I'm going to share more of that with you in just a minute. And as thrilled as I am of all of the work that we've done in the past and that we're doing today, I'm still surprised by how many people in the community just either aren't aware of us or the work that we're doing. And we're just not on their radar. Maybe we haven't been relevant. And so really because of this, I wake up every single day asking this question: how do we build more awareness of and engagement with the museum? And so for instance, this is an exhibition opening we had for the 75th annual juried exhibition that we had this summer. We had nearly 90 artists from across our region and 5 states across the country as far away as Arizona. We had over 300 people who were participating in the opening that night. And so I want to know how our museum can go from looking more like this, which is beautiful but no people, to more like this. And also I wanted to share, we're also very aware of where the engagement is coming from at the museum. So you can currently see that the map 45504 and 45503 are predominant areas of zip code where visitors come from. And we have much less visitation directly along Highway 40 from the south side of Springfield. And that is a particular area of interest for mine and my team in building engagement with. And part of the reason that we believe this, that we want to make this change, is we truly believe that art belongs to all people. We believe this so much that art belongs to all people is how we started our new diversity, equity, inclusion, and access statement this year that was recently adopted by the board. We know that as a dynamic and ever-changing museum, that we have to reflect the world that we wish to live in and the vital role we seek to fill in our community, and that we know together we are stronger. And this means across our entire community. We also know that museums and other cultural organizations are critical to the functioning of a vital and vibrant city. And this is from a national study that was done by an organization called LaPlaca Cohen. And these are the number one reasons, the top reasons why people participate in cultural organizations. The number one thing is having fun, interesting content, experiencing new things, feeling less stressed, which we all need now, and learning something new. We also learned by the museum, we specifically participated in a nationwide study of museums last year, and we're able to benchmark ourselves against what we're doing well and areas that we can improve upon against other museums in the country. One of the things, a few things I'm incredibly proud of is that we learned that 75% of our visitors responded that we contribute to the quality of life in our city versus 50% as a national average. So this is a 50% increase based on national average to other museums. Also, 30% of our respondents said that we aren't just nice, but we actually help people in our community. And this is also compared to a 15% of national average of museums. So again, we scored 50% higher than the rest of the museums across the country. And so we're doing a number of things to try to make a change and an impact upon our engagement at the museum. one of the things that we're doing is we know that partnership is essential to our ability to succeed as a museum. So in here I wanted to share a list. This is a list of some of the organizations, many of the organizations we've partnered with in the past year alone. So we know that we have to partner. We have to partner to be able to succeed in our community. And not only is it nice to be able to partner with others, but our work is just better when we can partner with other organizations, when we can think together, work together, and share resources together. So a few highlights of partnerships we've done. This might look familiar to Commissioner Estrop. He was at this event. This was a partnership, Downtown Sounds, with the Springfield Arts Council a few weeks ago in collaboration with our Black Life as Subject Matter exhibition. And we transformed the lobby of the museum into a nightclub, and we had jazz performances at the museum. It was so much fun. This is a partnership that we have with McKinley Hall called New Paths. So we, on days that we are closed to the public, we bring in people who are going through drug and alcohol recovery misuse, and they are coming into the galleries on the days that we're closed to the public to hold conversations that will spark part of their recovery process, and then also go and they go and create artwork together afterwards. And we're showing that this is truly impacting their ability to recover from their misuse. We've also been partnering with the Gammon House in Springfield. This year we partnered with Juneteenth, and we brought work from our collection by Columbus artist Amina Robinson over to display during the Juneteenth celebration, and we intend to partner again this year, and we're going to talk more about that. We also have intentional partnerships with our schools and preschools in the area. So we serve nearly 1,000 students through our kindergarten through high school age students, and we work with hundreds of preschool students. So these are students from Clark Preschool, and they are creating artwork about their own personal dreams in relationship to an exhibition that we had of David Catro's artwork earlier. We also know that relevance and representation matters. And so we're becoming much more intentional about the artwork that we're showing and how we're showing artwork at our museum. So we know from the LaPlaca-Cohen study that diversity really means representation. And we've learned that people of color are 82% more likely to stay away from activities that don't reflect a range of backgrounds. And so we're taking this on at the museum and being much more intentional about the artwork that we're showing, who we're partnering with, the curators that we're working with. As many of you have seen currently, we have the Black Life as Subject Matter exhibition, which highlights around 30 Black artists from across our entire state at the museum. And this exhibition will be traveling to the Rife Gallery at the Ohio Arts Council after it leaves our museum. And this was conceived of and curated by Dayton artist Bing Davis. This spring, we are working with the High Museum in Atlanta, and we're getting this exhibition called Really Free, The Radical Art of Nellie Mae Rowe. This exhibition won a Warhol Award, and it's also going to museums in New York and LA and a few other stops across the country, and our museum here in Springfield. And part of this program we're also able to get funding to do outreach programming as well. And so we're partnering again with the Gammon House for Juneteenth, with Hayward Middle School, Promise Neighborhood, and the City School District to reach out intentionally, particularly with the south side of Springfield, to be able to build awareness of the museum and specific programming with this community, because we want this exhibition to be accessible to and engaging for everyone. During the pandemic, we rehung the entire museum. And one of the ways that we're trying to think more intentionally about how we hang artwork from our collection as well. So in celebration of the 100th of the centennial of women's suffrage, we dedicated 2 galleries to artwork by women artists. And one of the galleries is all female artists from Ohio, around 50 works of art. And then the other includes artwork from women across the country and internationally. We're also thinking about how do we engage families and any of our visitors in really important questions. When we reopened from the pandemic, this is the exhibition that welcomed folks. So this was an exhibition designed to question the idea of what makes me feel safe. And so all of the artwork and all of the activities that you see in this space are designed to help families have conversations with their kids around what makes them feel safe. And we know that that was something needed. And you can see her, this was my daughter. This was a year ago, so she's gotten much bigger. But we want the museum to be accessible for families of all ages. In addition, we are bringing in artwork from across the country, and we're also, our collection is going out to places across the country. Our collection has been requested to be on view as far away as Utah, and it's currently up near Chicago. It's going to Pennsylvania. It went to the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, the Taft Museum, and the Polly Friedman Gallery near Scranton. We also know we just need to invite people to engage with the museum. That's something that museums don't always do enough of, and we want to do more of that. So for instance, this year we partnered with the Rotary, and we said, hey, you have thousands and thousands of people who come down to the food truck rally. How do we help get more folks into the museum? I learned when I came to the museum that in 2019, we had 5 people come into the museum the day of the food truck rally. And I said, we've got to change that. So we made yard signs, we put them out along there. We partnered with the Rotary Club. They brought folks in, and we had 225 people, a third of which who had never been to the museum before. We also partnered with Ashton Houseman of Envelope Date to do a concierge date night at the museum, where couples could come in and create art together and have a nice evening together. And then 2 weeks ago, we had our first community conversation in a partnership with the Black Life as Subject Matter exhibition. And we had nearly 50 community members who came from Cincinnati to Columbus to engage in conversations about bias. We also started a program called Museums for All, which provides free admission to the museum from anyone who's benefiting from SNAP or WIC. And here you can see where the museum or visitors truly come from all over the country. 57% of our visitors come from outside of the 4550 zip codes. And in the past year, we had about 250 groups of people who came in from outside of 3 hours of visitation. And so while we were able to do all of this, we also are struggling with this. So I actually took these photos today. We still have a roof leak in the old part of the building. We have floors that are torn up. We're able to do this work on a shoestring budget, but truly we need our spaces to be able to look more like this. So we're in the middle of our capital campaign right now. And so our Art Invites capital campaign, our goal is $7 million. We're in the third of 3 phases for this campaign. Phase 1 was to provide physical upgrades. So a new roof for the gallery portion of the building and HVAC, which has saved us 45% on utilities, or $50,000 that we can reinvest back into core mission programs. The second phase is building the endowment, which is also complete, where we raised $2 million to support annual operating costs of the museum. And now we need $1.5 million to close out our campaign. And so we want our spaces to be able to look more like this, where we're actually taking part of our original portion of our building, reducing some of the internal square space to continue to save more on operating costs, but to be able to have the space be much more usable for community gatherings, events, education, classes, because truly we want the museum to look less like this and to have opportunities that look more like this and like this. So that's just a little bit about what we've been going on. I know I'm going over my time, but I could talk about the museum all day, and I know you don't want me to do that, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Yes, you have a capital campaign. How do you donate to that? And I'll ask our city manager, are we as a city participating in this capital campaign?
Not currently, but that is something certainly to consider for the.
So we can take donations online. We can, you can submit checks to us. We're happy to work with you in a number of ways. You can contact myself directly to learn more about our capital campaign. I will come to your house to pick up a check if anyone would like. So our original goal was $5.9 million, and we did a budget validation of the final renovation project, which came back, the renovation was about $1.1 million more than we had originally planned because of supply chain issues and inflationary challenges. So we now have about $1.5 million to raise to be able to complete our campaign and to be able to provide new, vibrant, and inspiring spaces for our community. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right,
for-
thanks. Thank you.
Commissioners,
Thanks
go
for
ahead.
inviting me tonight.
welcome.
This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Jessamy. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all that you're doing in the community and really making art is about all people. So,
Great. Thank you.
Commissioners, we do have three items on the add-on sheet. The first one is related to item 262-21. This first reading has been requested to be held by the applicant. We also have an emergency ordinance which authorizes the exercise of the city's option to renew agreements with Huntington National Bank for our treasury management, depository services, and security custody services. And then an emergency resolution consenting to the reappointment of Jeanette Anderson, James Bacon, and Lisa Dunn to the Community Police Advisory. That concludes our work session.
Thank you. Public hearing scheduled for 6:55, I believe is our next agenda item. The roll call from the previous discussion will cover this also. As proper legal notice of this meeting to consider right away been made.
Notice was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, advertising the city commission's consideration of vacating South Murray Street from East Main Street south to the intersection of Section Street, and the vacation of Section Street from Penn Street east approximately 395 feet to the dead end. Attached here too are true and correct copies of the notices of public hearing published on October 30 and November 6, 2021.
I move that the communication be ordered received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, clerk call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrad,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes. Staff report.
Applicant is requesting to vacate the alley highlighted in yellow dotted line on slide. Return reports from utilities state no objections. However, Spectrum has requested information from applicant that is to be worked out between the applicant and Spectrum Company. Return reports from city staff recommend approval except for city manager's office stating reasons for denial as follows. The property owner has failed to maintain the property as agreed with the city. The owner needs to clear all junk vehicles, trash, debris, and tires, and repair all buildings prior to vacation. City Service Department recommends approval provided easements are retained for existing public utilities on South Murray Street. Planning and Zoning recommends approval provided all junk vehicles and trash be cleared as requested by city staff, as there are active code enforcement cases pending for approximately 15 parcels surrounding the alleys that are owned by the applicant. Overall, staff recommends approval of the request provided the applicant bring property use and function into compliance with zoning code. The parcels surrounding alleys to be vacated are not zoned to operate a salvage yard, but the parcels surrounding the alleys are owned by the applicant and had a legal non-conforming use associated with the use of parcels. If the alleys are vacated without taking these conditions into consideration, it will result in more areas being added into a non-compliant use. So if the applicant wishes to operate a salvage yard, he has to resolve all active code enforcement cases, apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals to reinstate the use of land to a legal non-compliant use, and receive proper permits required for operating a salvage yard, or revert to a conforming use as described in the CI1 zone zoning code. Staff received no objections from the public, and at the planning board meeting, the request was approved 4-2 in favor of the request. Thank you.
Are there any questions from commissioners?
Yes. I was just kind of looking at this and wondering, has any of the code enforcement, violations been addressed?
The applicant has appealed to the civil fines issued for all the parcels.
Anything else from commissioners? Anyone in the audience want to speak to this?
I'll back speak if I could. Eric, I drove by and there's still a lot of work to be done on this in terms of bringing it up. So I appreciate the fact that you're asking us to hold this, because I was going to make a motion that we table it further, but sir, if you're willing to withhold it at this point, I'm comfortable that obviously you've been doing some work, but there is more work to be done.
I came prepared to vote no. Postponing that. Do you want to make a motion?
Well, I think the gentleman has withdrawn his request, or withheld.
Okay. Yeah, but we
I
can.
don't think we need to have another public hearing on this.
Right.
I think we need to adjourn that on.
I'll move that we adjourn the public hearing.
I have a question. If the
Oh.
applicant want to speak first.
George Leibold, the owner of all the properties there. We've been doing a lot of work to it. Yes, it needs a lot more. And over the last, say, 45 years I've been there, I've cleaned it up a bunch. Have some street walkers there. We cleaned that up. Bunch of bad buildings, and you couldn't even see it. Couldn't even see shoulders for all trash, all that. But that's history. But we've cleaned it up, but then we've been guilty of letting it run away. And it's something that just didn't happen the last year. For like buildings, for some of the repairs that's been going on for a few years, and caught up with this. I don't know, maybe I bumped my head and I let it go, but I think I bumped it again, and along with the code enforcement people, it woke me up to it. We're gonna make it nice. The drawings that I had gave you is what's in my mind and what I'd like to do. I had those before the last reading, but we never got close to that. Ed McCall, architect, he's had a drawing for a couple years as my plan for a building in the East Main, the 500 block, which is about 150 feet. Stage one is. Would allow us to have 4 bays. The parking toward the east, toward Ajax, we had been in discussion with the city about putting a parking lot in there, and I agreed to do that. Still want to do that, but I can't get anywhere unless we get some other things done. But it's marked on there too, and that would work along with the building, the new building I have in my mind in 500 block. But anyway, I'm running off here, but we've done a lot of work. We've repaired a lot of block, put a lot of paint on. I think last week bought about $1,200 worth of paint. We're moving along, we'll get it, and we'll all be proud of it. I'm anxious
You.
I move we adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. So that brings us to the meeting itself.
Yep.
Sir. The roll call from the previous roll call will cover this also. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of. Our God, we're honored to have the opportunity to represent the people of Springfield this evening. Help us to do it well and serve the interests of our community. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For motion to approve the minutes,
So moved.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Clerk will proceed with first readings by title only.
The first item was held by the applicant, granting to First Transit Incorporated the authority, right, and privilege to establish, maintain, and operate a motor bus public transportation system in the city of Springfield, Ohio, for the transportation for hire of passengers only, and fixing the terms and conditions of such grant and providing for the city's participation in the cost of such operation. Authorizing the city manager to enter into option contracts for the contingent purchase of real estate with Interfaith Hospitality Network of Springfield and Clark County Incorporated for the sale of 128 East Southern Avenue and 237, 239 East Southern Avenue, which are owned by the city and no longer needed for municipal purposes. Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 3 to the agreement with Property Registration Champions LLC, ProChamp, to extend the contract period through February 11, 2020.
Any comments on first readings?
Yes. I have a question, and I guess I have two questions. The first one is 294-21 on the First Transit. I noticed that next year they are not running the day after Thanksgiving. Are they running this year, the day after Thanksgiving?
They will not be running Thanksgiving this year.
Okay, thank you. And the next question was for Shannon. I just wanted to know if she had any updates on how the property registration with Champions are doing with property owners registering their property.
We should have let Steve come up since code enforcement is his bailiwick, but I'll do my best. He'll tell me if I did anything wrong. ProChamps is doing very well for us. Recall that it is $100 per property to register. That is an administrative pass-through, so the city is not accumulating any funds in maintaining the property registry, but ProChamps does the back-end administration. Currently, we have about 800 identified residential properties, and just over 50% of those are registered, which are vacant. The rest of them are either hard-nosed individuals that are receiving fines for not registering their property, or their properties that have been identified without an actual known user, i.e. they haven't been through probate because of death, or they're held in an LLC that we may have to pierce that veil. But overall, the vacant property registry is working well. The information is shared with first responders when they need it. That is the entire point of the vacant property registry. However, it is also helping us as we navigate our way through the housing crisis in identifying properties that can be rehabilitated and turned back onto the private market before they become so bad that they actually affect the rest of the properties around them.
Oh, now, a lot of people have asked about the red and white X
Sure.
on houses. Could you explain that?
Absolutely. So our staff, led actually by Jeremy Least in the Code Enforcement Division, actually conducts a physical inspection of the vacant properties. And when you see that red X, that's actually an industry sign used by first responders to know that the house is unsafe on the inside. So that red X is a signal to our first responders that there is something that is dangerous on the inside. So if they have to make entry, they need to make entry with extreme caution. Oftentimes that red X means that the stairwells are missing, or the floor is missing, or that the stairs or the floor have big giant holes in them. So that is part of our communication in the middle of the night, more or less, or on the weekends with first response to help keep them safe.
For asking that question, because I think, as I recall our discussion, that was one of the major issues we talked about, was the safety of our first responders. And I was unaware that in some cases, we had first responders going in the house only fall through a big hole in the floor, some of which were there simply by condition of the house, others that were intentional in nature. That surprised me, so I'm glad to hear that's happened. In terms of the receivership program, which we talked about at our retreat, when do you think we will see some legislation?
I would think we would see some in the first quarter of 2022.
Okay.
With the intent of taking the first properties through the court process in March 2022.
That's good, because I think that's the other piece that's so critical to this, is in fact being able to move to, with those 400 properties that are by and large unaccounted for, to be able to get those off that list and back on some kind of active list where people can remodel or buy the property or whatever. So I think that's a critical piece that we need to move forward on in terms of the work of the housing consortium. The other is the financing piece. And I hope we're taking a look at CDFI or a look like CDFI, that we can in fact examine and see if that fits also.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
Anyone else? Okay, clerk, proceed with second reading.
Amending the zoning map of Springfield, Ohio by rezoning 2.4 acres along Level Lane, Superior Avenue, and Huron Avenue, Springfield, Ohio, from RS5 Low Density Single Family Residence District to CN2 Neighborhood Commercial District.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Good news in the paper this week that SBDC received that grant for $1 million. It means the impossible, I guess, isn't impossible.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Anyone in the audience want to speak to this? Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
amending the zoning map of Springfield, Ohio by rezoning 0.99 acre at 1783 and 1785 North Belmont Avenue, Springfield, Ohio, from RS8 Medium Density Single Family Residence District to OPDH Plan Development Housing Overlay District.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into an employment incentive agreement with Carlos Provisions and Eatery to incentivize establishing a small restaurant and market located at 45 North Fountain Avenue, create employment and new investment in the city, and authorizing the city manager, finance director, and law director to do all things necessary to implement the said employment incentive agreement.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, so this is the new restaurant that's going there by the parking garage. When are they gonna be open?
Yes, Commission. So we just finished up the white box build out, which was our responsibility to complete for the tenants. And so now they're beginning their tenant improvements. And Charlo's Provisions and Eatery is working on their building permits and their drawings right now. So they hope to submit here in the next couple weeks and be under construction before the end of the year, and then open up in the first quarter of 2022. And then the other tenant, Alkany Weavers, has a little bit quicker build out for their tenant fit out, and they would hope to be open actually during the holiday season.
So like Thursday, Friday,
Uh,
or
if not
Christmas?
the end of this week, they'll probably open up first part of December.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Anyone in the audience want to speak to this? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the issuance of a purchase order in amount not to exceed $60,569 for the purchase of traffic signal video detection equipment from Baldwin and Sauer.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments, commission?
Yes, I'm taking your place tonight, Dave.
That's
I have
at
a
it.
question for Chris Moore. If you could talk about this, please. Exactly what are the cameras for? Where at?
Yes, Commissioner. So these cameras are for video detection of vehicles to actuate the traffic signals. They work in the place of the lines or the traffic loops you may see on the ground. These are to replace the equipment at Main and Burnett, Main and Belmont, Main and Greenmount, and Home and Limestone. Those were all installed around 2001, and they have more than reached the end of their useful life.
Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 21-339, which authorized the law director to approve and settle a claim with Kenneth M. and Wilma B. Stone, and the director of finance to make payment in relation to said claim, to correct the amounts and declaring an emergency therein.
Good out.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a Shelter Plus Care One grant agreement with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in an amount not to exceed $196,151. Authorizing the city manager and the director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions for commission? Yeah.
I'd like to know a little more about the grant and what the impact's going to be.
Right. Grant is for $196,150 and covers the period of 10/1 of this year till 9/30. Dan, talk.
Sure. So Shelter Plus Care is a pass-through grant that the city of Springfield receives. Springfield Metropolitan Housing administers that for us, and it provides the the gap funding necessary for around 25 families and or individual households that experience disability of some sort. So under housing choice voucher, there's always, a portion that the family will pay. Shelter Plus Care helps fill that gap so that families experiencing severe disabilities can maintain permanent housing.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a subrecipient agreement, public facilities and improvements with Interfaith Hospitality Network of Springfield and Clark County Incorporated, to provide funding for the necessary renovations and repairs to reopen Norm's Place and Hartley House emergency congregate shelters for an amount not to exceed $185,000. authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said subrecipient funding agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Again, just like to have some sense of what we're doing here and
Certainly
Better
can do that, and then Shannon, if you want to fill the gap. So, working our continued efforts to help address the displaced individual crisis that our community is facing. Obviously, we know one of our strong partners in this is IHN, or Interfaith Hospitality Network, and they have two facilities that were shut down during COVID because of the congregate living situation. Because obviously, with COVID, congregate living was not recommended or supported. And so this will allow IHN to move forward with renovations and repairs that will help address some of the congregate living issues within the facilities, but also make improvements beyond that so that we can open those shelters back up to help, our community address the crisis that we're facing around displaced individuals.
thank you very much.
In the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes?
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the exercise of the city's option to renew agreements with the Huntington National Bank for treasury management, depository services, and security custody services for an amount not to exceed $50,000, confirming and approving related expenditures from November 5th, 2021 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Question or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes?
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
consenting to the reappointment of Jeanette Anderson, James Bacon, and Lisa Dunn to the Community Police Advisory Team and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Since I'm sort of one of the people connected to this group, basically, what we're doing is having the group split into three parts for renewal, and these three agreed to go first. So,
I don't think they agreed to go first. I think it goes by alphabetical order by their last name.
I was trying to make it nice.
But okay.
Anyone in the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes?
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes. We're sort of going to miss you, Joyce, but not all the time, Joyce.
I'm gonna miss you all the time. Joyce.
really.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda. Are there other items to come before us from commissioners? Mr. Escrow.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving and a healthy and safe Thanksgiving. Secondly, go Cats.
Yes.
We're in the Final Four, and I'd love to play in the championship game. Apparently, it's never happened in football in the history of this city for Springfield High, or North or South, and it's time. So go Cats, and of course, I would be remiss if I also didn't say go Bucks, because we're playing that team from up north. You know who I'm talking about. Third, I have a question. We had some issues, Brian, with a family in a rental unit at 46 East Madison. And I know a number of agencies and people were involved. Has all of that been straightened out? Has the family been relocated and the issues with the house addressed?
Yes, Commissioner. So I'll answer that in a couple parts. So, staff was certainly aware of an issue related to a family living in a property specifically that had lead issues. And this family also had young children, including a newborn that was present in the home. And so obviously that was a major crisis in terms of the health and status of the family. And so one of the immediate things was to work towards a solution for finding other means of housing for this family, and specifically removing the children from the lead hazard that existed in this property. And so through a miracle of collaboration throughout the community, and really just resiliency and helping advance this issue forward to help again the public health of this family, we were able to relocate the family to a property that's actually owned by Wittenberg, which is part of the partnership and collaboration. Last week, last
Great.
Friday, I actually know
Great.
our health commissioner, who Charlie Patterson, as we know, has stepped up in a big way for our community in terms of COVID, stepped up in a big way in terms of this issue as well, and helped pick up the keys from Wittenberg. Again, a testament to Wittenberg and their willingness to partner and collaborate with the community. So first off, yes, we have made it safe for the family by relocating them. Your second part of the question was dealing with some of the issues of the house. Those remain, and that is something that our staff, our team will continue to work through as we look, hopefully for this property to be put back in productive reuse within the community. We'll work on the various violations and issues that exist within the structure before occupancy would be permitted for any additional families or individuals.
I'm delighted to hear the collaboration, and my personal thanks to all of the organizations, agency, and people involved. It did take a collaborative effort to get this done, and I think the people of Springfield are very fortunate that we have organizations and people who realize this is sometimes what it takes. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the follow-up. Thank you.
And I just had a question, if the staff could tell us a little bit about holiday in the city. When is Santa coming to town, and does anybody have that kind of schedule?
Yeah, I can speak briefly to it. So when COVID hit, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, who has been responsible for managing or running holiday in the city, had to really shift gears. And so last year you saw, instead of the traditional one-night event, they really focused on providing additional lighting throughout the downtown. And what they found is that actually was a larger draw for the entire holiday season as opposed to just one night. And so the CVB with that kind of has refocused or reshaped the event itself and really extended it beyond just a one-night event and really made it about the entire holiday season. And so I know this Friday, November 26th, they will have the grand illumination, which will be, obviously you can see out there tonight that some of the lights are on as they're testing. I saw the contractor that is doing the majority of the lights out there checking it. Obviously our service department, our team does a great job of helping hang the lights and have our downtown just looking wonderful for the holiday season. And so they'll do that grand illumination on Friday. And then I know on December 11th, they also plan to hold kind of a light show. I'm not sure if it's like a laser light show or not, but they'll have another event where there's a light show downtown. And then one of the new items that was just recently added to the event is an outdoor skating rink. And so that outdoor rink is located actually on the City Hall Plaza and will be open, I believe, Thursday through Sunday in the evenings, 4 to 8, I believe. And various organizations will actually be volunteering and supporting that ice rink. So it'll be, again, another great community collaboration. But we'll just offer another opportunity for people to come downtown throughout the entire holiday season as opposed to just a one-night event.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience want to address us? Name and address for the record.
My name is Mike Lowe, and my address is on file with the clerk. On Monday, November the 18th at 12:36, I called the non-emergency number. I told the dispatcher there was a vehicle going 60 to 65 miles per hour on Bechtel Avenue. I gave a description of the vehicle. The vehicle got stopped at a red light at Commerce Road. I noticed no back plate on the vehicle or window. The vehicle went to Kroger's on Bechtel Avenue and pulled in a handicapped spot. I checked the front, no plate or handicap sticker. I told the dispatcher all of this information. I took a picture of the back and front of the vehicle. I waited 45 minutes and no police arrived. I called back to the non-emergency number and got another dispatch. She said she had no information of me calling it in. She transferred me to Officer Nick. He said he had no record of it. I thought, is there a glitch in the new system, or did the dispatcher not want to be bothered? I called the city manager's office and told them the problem. City manager said he would email Mr. Clark at the sheriff's office since he's in charge of the 911 system. A young guy and a young woman got in the vehicle and sped away. On Tuesday, I called the sheriff's office. I left a message for Mr. Clark. Wednesday, I called the sheriff's office again and left a message. Thursday, I called again. On Friday, I went to the sheriff's office. Since I was never called back, I requested a copy of the tape and the paper report from Mrs. Bailey and Cadet Kelly. Also on Friday, I went to the city requesting a copy of the email from city manager to Mrs. Elliott, the supervisor of the dispatch. Mrs. Elliott stated in the email, a call was made and the caller did not leave a name or request to see an officer. Mrs. Elliott said she would get an email for the dispatcher of the steps taken on the call. On Monday, Mrs. Bailey and Cadet Kelly said the dispatcher put out a BOL, which means be on the lookout. This is unacceptable. I gave them exact address. The city lost a minimum of $250 for the handicap violation and no plate and whatever other violations could have occurred. Somebody needs to check the non-emergency procedure and perhaps better training. If this happened to me, how many other calls has this happened to? I want my tax dollars to be used efficiently. Also, I know the city is not meeting the requirements for the police and the fire with the charter. You have any answers or can find out anything?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we ought to ask for a formal inquiry into the dispatch operation by the county. The county now runs dispatch, we don't.
Right.
We pay for it, but I agree with you, we should be getting our money's worth.
And I have
So
a copy of the
I
tape that I
would-
called in.
I would ask that we have a formal inquiry into how this fell through the cracks and see what's going on. We want to avoid it in the future, obviously. I couldn't agree more with you.
Thank you.
Okay, I forgot to mention that we have a three-minute limit on comments from the audience. Name and address for the record, please.
Harold Frost, Armsgate, 03. I'd just like to ask a question. Hope I'm not out of line with it. Is there some reason why John Legend Theater is not handicap accessible?
I don't think we have any idea, do we? We don't have any control over John Legend Theater.
Theater belongs to the school system.
Okay.
I
Thank
thought
you.
they actually addressed that, the handicap accessibility. But an individual with a handicap need, they have an entry point to the rear of the auditorium that is handicap accessible, is my understanding. But I can certainly talk with the superintendent and make sure that is the case.
Maybe it's a matter of making clear to people how to get there.
As I think about it, you're absolutely right. It's in the rear, and in fact, there are, have been, but you have to go in the doors at the rear of the auditorium. They are not accessible from the wing, only accessible through the back door. Like I say, the school district runs it, so I don't know how they inform people of it.
We will-
Maybe that's part of the problem.
We will pass your concern on to them. Name and address for the record.
You, Kyle Kaler, 4674 Hominy Ridge Road, Springfield, Ohio, 45502. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Good to see you. I come before you tonight with an idea. And before I start, I want to say I regret the fact that my colleagues in Columbus didn't agree with me on splitting, how they split up Springfield and Clark County between two congressional districts in this past week. If you remember, I voted no on that. I don't think Springfield and Clark County should be split. Colleagues of mine told me that I should be thankful that two congressmen are going to represent our area, but I'm afraid the 60,000 members of Springfield, citizens of Springfield, are going to be left behind from the 7,000 folks in Dayton and Beaver Creek. And the same for the rural part of Clark County when it comes to areas like Hilliard and Dublin and Franklin County. So, but because of that, I sat on Sunday morning and read in the paper about the new congressional district, and it hit me that we have a very unique opportunity in the next 12 months. For the next 12 months, we're going to have 3 congressmen, acting congressmen, in office with voting privileges that are going to be looking at Springfield and Clark County. Warren Davison, our current congressman, and then 2 new congressmen who are going to already in office, Mike Carey, Congressman Mike Carey from over in the Columbus area, and then Congressman Mike Turner from the Dayton area. There's also going to be a number of people running against them in the next year as well. So there's other people that'll be interested, along with our U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown and U.S. Senator Rob Portman. Because of that, I think that presents a very unique opportunity, because as I read the Sunday paper and realized that our president had also just signed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. While I'm always reticent about spending tax dollars, that money is going to be spent, and I think it should be spent in the right way. My proposal is that we come together as a community, as a city, a county, and at the state level. I've talked with Senator Bob Hackett about this just this evening, that we come together and ask our federal legislators and anyone running for office at the same time to consider taking 0.00005 or 5/1000% of that $1.2 trillion and fund the complete cleanup of the Tremont City barrel fill. I want to agree with my friend Commissioner O'Neill, who said from the very beginning we need to be doing this ourselves. We've been waiting for a very long time. I don't know when the federal government's going to settle this with the responsible parties, but I think this is a unique opportunity to have our federal legislators speak up and say this needs to be cleaned up so that we can protect the most important natural resource we have in our community. I don't want to wait till something bad happens. I agree with Commissioner Eastrup. He said that in the past, but this is a very unique time. So Senator Hackett and I are going to be drafting a letter. I am here tonight to request whatever process there is for the city commission to come together and decide whether they can support that letter. I'm going to be asking everyone from the city commission board, the mayor, our county commission board, our health commissioner, our county elected officials, our township trustees, the Springfield Partnership, and any other community leaders that will get behind this to say to our congressional leaders, we need your help. As I understand from my work on this issue, it was going to cost $56 million at one point to clean the complete barrel fill out. It changed to as you all know, a $27 million project of removing only the liquids and leaving behind the solid. I am hoping that we can get the federal government with the environmental, what's the term they use in the budget, environmental remediation that is laid out in the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, to have them help us do that. The US EPA can go out and take on the responsible parties on their own in the future, but I think this is an opportunity in the next 12 months to be able to clean this up. I stood here a long time ago and stood back there, and a former congressman told me his worst nightmare was leaving behind and not fixing that. I've got 12 months left before I leave office. I would like to see us do this, so I'm coming before you tonight to pose that. and for you to do what you need to do to consider that in the future.
Thank you.
I agree to the point that it's two separate issues. The courts will deal with the concerned parties. We need to deal as a, not only community, county, city, everybody. We have to get it cleaned up. He's right, finally.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you, Kevin. I think so that our congressmen, plural, can understand how we feel about this. It may not be a bad idea to present such a proposal at a meeting that includes all the people you just identified. The last time we got any movement at all, Region 5 came down and saw how upset this entire area of the state was about what was going on with the water. My only concern is I don't like letting the responsible parties off the hook because they will continue to be bad citizens. So would ask you to consider maybe we go 50-50, part of it being getting it all out and holding the responsible parties accountable for their share of what the plan is that was approved. Interestingly, as you know, the plan approved is the one Waste Management submitted. And that's why I don't want to let those suckers off the hook. They ought to pay.
I was involved in this issue from the beginning, and I went to Chicago more than, I think, 2 different times about it, and I agree we need to get it done. I do not want to let the responsible parties off the hook, and that's the only concern I would have about how we proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. And all I can say is I feel the same as you do. It is my fear that someday there's going to be a leak somewhere. And if we have a chance in the next 12 months with this unique opportunity, like I've been talking about, to get this cleaned up, to get it fully funded, to remove every bit, which is not the plan at this point in time, I believe the best plan is to remove every bit of it so that we don't ever have to worry about this again. That is my goal. My goal is to get it cleaned up. The responsible parties, I believe that at the federal government, that's not something we can do. That's something the federal government will do.
And there is legal action that we can take for the responsible parties also as far as reparation come back to us, plus endangering. There's lawyers that can deal with it. And it's two separate issues.
Well, I hope you're right.
Well, we won't know till we ask.
Is there anyone else? Well, if we spend a whole bunch of money and we learn that way, it'll be painful. That's what we don't need to argue about it. I'm just concerned that we not let them off the hook. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to address us? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrad?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Meeting's adjourned.